and suspects in a shooting becoming a victim in another. So we're seeing two things in the number. Slight increase in youth, the age cohort, but we're seeing then another group, tends to be older, which are repeat, people on at least 2 occasions, repeat victims. It also says between 2004 and 2006, 13 victims then became suspects in 16 non-fatal shootings and 6 homicides. So it was victims who then became, which is between 2004 and 2006, 9 offenders, 9 suspects, 9 people were suspects in 7 homicides and 15 non-fatal shootings. Going back. So what this says, this little chart tells you, the top one, it says you're a black male, age 16, who was a victim of a non-fatal shooting multiple times, 3 times on this, that you see on this chart, is now got a felony case pending against him for a weapons charge. In other words, a victim becoming a suspect. The one down the bottom shows a repeat offender. One male, 20 years old, is a suspect in 3 different homicides. So as we look at not just only the numbers, but who are the victims and who are the suspects, what we perceive, 2 big conclusions, is, what you sense. There's a younger group coming up with a strong correlation to truancy. And the second thing we see is an older group victimizing each other over and over and over again. Both sides involve guns. In 2005, that went to 87%. In 2006, it went almost exclusively to guns, 92%. More guns in the homicides. See something else. This is robberies in the city. Basically, it shows robberies going up from 2004 to 2005, and then going down in 2006. Great. Robberies are going down. What are you seeing happening, though? Even though robberies went down, the use of guns in robberies, and the number of robberies committed with guns, went up. So what used to be either a physical intimidation, typically a physical intimidation, is now an intimidation and a robbery with a weapon. So that young people, repeat people, guns. And this is the other thing you see. There are just some places in the city, there are bars, that are real problems with real unacceptable behavior. And that neighbors and the police and the city go back to state liquor control or some other certifying agency over and over again. These are the number of calls in 2006 to just a couple locations in the city. Newts and Taurus are places that have been in the news the last 10 days. The fact is, those are places you're going to have a murderer there. I mean, it's just going to happen the way they're operated right now. They're a threat to neighborhoods. Young people, increasingly, with truancy as a gateway. Repeat people that we're seeing over and over again. Guns, location, direction. Deployment. Pending, already submitted 2 months ago to the Board of Aldermen, pending right now, is changing deployment to add 80 police officers to the city. The goal of this is to provide visibility in the neighborhoods, to provide walking beats and bike patrol beats back in the neighborhood, and to keep the same officers in the district. When we're stretched, we're moving officers around. This keeps the same officers in the neighborhood. Second, guns. There's got to be a consequence to guns. Running through all of this. The reason why these units are out here, Rick Epstein, chair of the Board of Police Commissioners, and Bishop Brooks is on the Board of Police Commissioners, are here, who I see. The Board of Police Commissioners, on its own initiative, organized a gun buyback about 6 weeks, 2 months ago, raised the money to do it. The most guns we'd ever gotten in a gun buyback were about a dozen, approximately a dozen. Of course, in 3 weeks, 88 guns were turned in. This was highly different from anything that we had seen before. Huge volume, turned in. Not counted in the 260 guns that we picked up by the police this year. And they're typically if you look at them, they're all kinds of firearms, and they're typically what we see used out there on the street right now. So aside from whatever we do with gun buybacks, we've created an 8-person unit in the police department. It's a firearms unit just to focus on prosecuting and developing information on any incident involving a gun, to perfect our prosecutions. And the second thing is we have implemented and have operationalized this week with the state police a task force on going after gun trafficking in the city as well. We're going to be engaging the state on a third issue, which is gun trafficking coming into the state of Connecticut. This is something that the New Haven Police Department can't do. It has to be a collaboration of state and federal agencies working with some local resources about how guns are getting into the state. Third thing is repeat offenders. Met with both the U.S. Attorney and the Chief State's Attorney for New Haven, and have asked for and got a commitment for dedicated gun prosecutions and for faster processing of gun prosecutions. Again, the idea that having guns has to carry a quick and prompt response out there. Also asked the U.S. Attorney to take on federal prosecution of gun crimes if the person arrested already has had a felony conviction in their history. I mean, keep in mind the difference between a state and a federal prosecution. A state prosecution gets you 2 years somewhere in the state at most. Federal, you do 15 years, you do it out of state, you're gone. It creates a clear consequence. And the third thing we're looking for from the criminal justice system is real bonds for people arrested with guns. When an officer arrests somebody with a gun, they're back out on the street, that's a problem. You saw the real difference here in the early and mid-1990s when the organized gangs were taken down. When they were arrested, they were not out an hour later. They were gone. And that was understood on the street that they were gone. Civil behavior. Three things here. Oftentimes when we arrest, when we have victims of gunplay, they don't talk to us. They don't talk to us. Remember that repeat situation? Because these are folks who are involved. What we're seeking the state is to impanel grand juries that can compel witness testimony. We need people, once they're shot or are a victim of crime, to talk to us. Because oftentimes they are involved in behavior, they don't talk to the police. That's a problem. Second, we need stronger nuisance abatement laws. In other words, we've got to make it easier to shut down. We've been up in Hartford on the Tourist Club, trying to get it shut down. It's a consistent problem for us. We need a threshold that's reasonable for the police and community. Third, we're looking to create a community roundtable of activists, religious leaders, that we can do what we did with last night. Interact on a regular basis about things that are important that we need to do in contact. Frankly, we need women from the community talking to young women about pregnancy, teen pregnancy. We need men talking to young men about what is appropriate behavior and what isn't appropriate behavior. And that's not just going to be best done by the police. It needs to be done by members of the community who are respected. Go after this at-risk older population. Having said that there is a population that we want to create a consequence for, the PD keeps a Facebook of about 200 to 250 individuals who we know are at risk of harming someone else or themselves being harmed. We've started piloting a program with the NAACP that we're going to want to grow. It is basically a street outreach worker program. Compensated people who are not city employees, community folks, who interact with the police. We give them the names of people we want them to talk to, go out in the community and make clear that they are putting themselves and other people at risk, that there are choices and they need to make a decision about where they're going with their lives before they come back and cause a problem again. At-risk youth. I actually want to mention truancy first. When we went back and looked at all the young victims and suspects, there were a lot of common threads. A lot of them were at home, but a lot of them were truancy. They were systemic truants. What we've begun moving towards doing is revamping the truancy operation through the school district. We're going to be going out at night. We're going directly home. We're going to find somebody home, because oftentimes when we get home, there is no one home there with these kids. If there is no one home, we need to give truancy the capability to refer to agencies that can intervene, whether it's DCF or juvenile authorities. But the number of kids that we're dealing with here who are harming each other is relatively small. And we've got a great predictor for finding them, which is truancy. And that will be done through the Board of Ed. The police department is going to launch something called Times Almost Up. And this is pulling together our partners in juvenile, probation, and in other places to engage, again, an identifiable cohort of kids who are predictably at risk. Finally, just mention youth services here. There's been a dramatic increase in both summer jobs and programming for kids throughout the city. We want to commit ourselves to goals this year of offering after-school programs for all middle school kids. Middle school is a tough age, and a lot of choices are being made. You know, in New Haven, we've largely moved to eliminate middle schools and incorporated them in our elementary schools in order to bring down the volume in the middle schools. We're going to move to do some other programs with these kids, but we want to give them after-school choices. Actually, one of the things that didn't make it on the slide is a very clear message to us last night for both suspensions and expulsions. And we do not tolerate a lot of nonsense in schools, and that's why we feel good about the atmosphere in our schools. We need to embrace these kids who are being expelled. We do have suspensions, but we just can't send them out on the street. We need to create some kind of structured atmosphere for those kids. And the last thing I'll mention is jobs. Nothing substitutes for these kids having interactions with other adults. And frankly, a great way to do it is with jobs. Youth who are increasingly can be identified by truancy is the first group. Repeat offenders is second. The role of guns is the third issue in all of this. And problem locations is the fourth part of this problem. The response to be structured is to enable our cops to do their job by having sufficient numbers of them out there to engage the community. Going after guns powerfully in the city and in the state. Third, going after repeat offenders, creating clear consequences to their behavior. Fourth is engaging the community, particularly around how we reach out to these to the young people and to the older people who are certain to repeat. Fifth is going out and at-risk older population in advance with the street worker program. Next is the younger people through a truancy, largely through a truancy initiative, and finally wrapping around a series of youth initiatives that we've got. I want to acknowledge the school department and police department and mayor's office have done a lot of work putting this together, and a lot of community groups, the management teams, community-based police officers, and a lot of just community leaders have done a great job. So I'm going to stop and be glad to take questions folks may have about either the numbers, what we think the numbers mean, or directions that folks have. You know, I mean, there are people out there now who I will tell you now are going to hurt themselves or hurt someone else with some certainty. That's going to happen. And frankly, we want to get out in front of those people. This is the way we think to do it.
Can you talk a little more about Times Up, our Times Up program? And that is a group led by the U.S. Attorney's Office and the State's Attorney's Office, the Police Department, Juvenile Probation, and a lot of other partners. It's in its infancy right now as it's being created, but the premise behind it is to bring law enforcement and service providers together to try to offer children or youth the positive alternative to behavior, certain behaviors. We recognize that our Time's Up program has been successful, so we'd like to see if that can be as successful as we want.
Officers, the thing you don't see here, which is about 25 civilians to support the PD, that comes from the city. As you also may know, what we've seen is that in early 2000, 2001, we were receiving about $3 million a year in federal Justice Department money. We receive basically nothing now in federal Justice Department money. In the late 90s, we were receiving well over $1 million for summer jobs programs from the federal government. You know, now we receive zero from the federal government for summer jobs programs. So where we're going to go for this? Different pieces, different parts. We've already engaged the New Haven delegation on some asks that are non-financial. Those have to do with nuisance abatement laws to go after these clubs. We do expect to go and look to the state for, frankly, funding for, so much now in Boston, but in the last decade, in the 1990s, it worked extraordinarily well in Boston and DC, particularly youth violence. So we'll go there. We'll re-engage the federal congressional officers through our 2 United States senators and our congresswoman. Mostly go through the programs that involve youth and for street worker programs. We also need the attention of the U.S. Attorney, the State's Attorney, DCF, juvenile probation. We need them being staffed by state to do their jobs they're supposed to do.
With the subpoena power,
Will get divided up among the police districts. We're in the task room. The task room is basically where the analysis is done on where is street activity going. The busiest part of the city is sort of the intersections of Whaley Ave